I must have popped into a parallel universe because apparently there's something called a LERP 3 color that can be used to blend 3 textures together to create a landscape. In the previous video, I used 2 different LERP nodes to do that, but there's just a 3 color LERP. That's a lot simpler. So this is how you would use the LERP 3 color node. Or this can be used on any object. You could texture your giant chipmunk with fur using this method as well. First, right-click and create a new material. I will name it M underscore to use the naming convention for materials. I'll call mine Landscape 3 Color. Double-click to open the material. Then we're going to right-click and type in LERP, and that will be on linear interpolate, which we used last time, but this time we're going to scroll down and find LERP 3 color. There you go. The other thing you can do is type in the number 3 and then color with no spaces, and it will pop up on that list. Make sure you get LERP 3 color though. And then I'm just going to save that for now because we need to pick some textures that we're going to use. I'm going to go to the Fab store. That's where everything is now for Unreal Engine. We don't have Quixel Bridge anymore. If you click that hamburger on the upper left, you can choose materials and textures. And then we can search for whatever we want. If we're working on a landscape, maybe grass, everything is pretty much 99 cents now. Those Megascans ones that used to be free. If you did grab these for free last year, then you don't have to pay the 99 cents. When you click into it, you can see that you already own it. And then you can choose the quality you want. You can get high or medium. I believe high is 4K, medium is 2K. This megalophobia level that I'm working on is pretty simple, so I can afford to use a 4K texture, and I want it to look really good. You're going to have to agree to this. This is a license agreement. If you want to paste it into an AI and have it summarize this for you, you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to agree to the top one, but I don't want to receive news and special offers. Then it's going to download and automatically bring you back to your project, where now you have a Fab folder. And subfolder Megascans, and then surfaces. Now I've already downloaded a bunch of stuff. And here's the grass, and you can see this folder says high for high quality. And this is the actual material that I'm not going to be using. You can see this is an instance of that material. I'm just going to be using one of the texture images. But if you want to look at the parent material, as we're learning, just to see how the professionals make materials, maybe you can learn something from studying these. But I really just want this picture of the grass. And I recommend renaming these because usually it's just random numbers and letters. You're probably going to want a better description in case you're choosing textures from a drop-down list. So I'll call this T underscore grass pale. So it looks like some pale grass. Actually, I don't think I'm a fan of this particular texture. Here's one I downloaded before that I do like. This one is just 2K. You can double click and get some more information about these textures. the resolution over here. You can also make your own texture images in Midjourney if you have a Midjourney account. Remember that these tiles have to be seamless so that the edges match up. So what you can do is type -- tile at the end, and that instructs Midjourney to make it a seamless pattern that's going to match up. Pretty impressive. All right, so I am going to open my material again. And I'm just going to shrink this window. This is how I like to drag textures into my material graph. There are other ways you can do it. So for this example, since I'm working on a landscape, I'll use these clover patches for one of my 3 textures. And I'll connect it to the A input. Then I will use, what is this, dried pine needles or something. Of course, I don't think I would really use these particular textures. I'm just using images with different colors for contrast so you can see what's going on. You know, it wouldn't really make any sense to have, here's some snow and dried pine needles and clover in the same area. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Let's connect this to the base color. And now we just need our alpha input. And if you saw the previous video, you know that that's just going to be a grayscale picture of a pattern. It's got to be a seamless tile, of course. And that pattern is going to determine how our 3 textures are applied. Where there's black, it's going to apply the first texture, and where it's white, it's going to apply the 3rd texture, and then in between it will blend. So like 50% is going to be our dried pine, and then blending in between everywhere. And you can see I plugged in the red output. You can choose any color, it doesn't matter. Don't forget to change the roughness to 1, unless you want shiny terrain, which I think looks really fake. All right, now I'm going to apply this material, and you can see we have the gradient stripes determined by our alpha picture. And the tiling is still tiny because we haven't adjusted that yet. And you can see here that where that alpha picture was dark, we have our grass or our clover texture. And then medium gray, we got our 2nd pine texture in the center. And where the gradient was white, we have our 3rd snow texture. Now that doesn't look like a smooth blend there. I'm not sure why, but whatever, you get the idea. Other places that you can get these grayscale pictures, they come with this VR template in Unreal. I think at least one of them comes with the starter content, but the rest, I believe, come with all the projects as part of the engine folder. And you can search for noise, and you can use your filter to limit your results to textures. And you can look around there. You can also search for variation. There's macro variation, which also can work. These are seamless tiles with black and white pattern information. If you don't have that engine folder, in settings in the content browser, just check the box for engine content. Sometimes it's hidden. Anyway, the whole idea behind this is that we would tile it to spread across the entire landscape. So we're going to get splotches of different types of terrain. And in the previous video, we discussed how to do that, but I'll quickly review. You would right-click and add a texture coordinate node. And then we're going to add a scalar parameter. And this is going to be sort of like a variable. I'm going to call it tiling alpha. And that we can change then, since it's a parameter. And a multiply node, connect those two and then output it into your alpha texture there. And we can change this. We want it to be a small number. The smaller the number, the more blown up the pattern is going to be. The bigger it's going to spread across your landscape. So 0.001, let's see, that actually might be too blown up. Yeah. So that means one tile is bigger than my entire landscape. So let me change this to 0.01. Yeah, there you can see now that pattern is blown up pretty big. And of course, we're not going to use this. This does not look like a natural landscape. It's just an example so you can see quite clearly how these different textures are applied based on the alpha picture. And you can play around with the different alpha pictures, the noise tiles that are provided with the template. That one looks like camouflage to me. And there's one called Perlin noise. I think that comes with starter content. That usually looks pretty good. But you can see that it doesn't have a lot of the grass color, which means it doesn't have enough deep blacks in the grayscale image. And you can plug in your texture into a different input. Like you can just swap them out, A, B, and C, and then you're going to get a different result. Let's try this arrangement. All right, that looks like kind of dirty snow. Let me try something else. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Yeah, so swap those textures and you might get very different results. You never know. Definitely now and then come down to the player level and see what your material looks like. You can hit simulate if you want things to be happening in your level when you look around. Yeah, so from down here I can see that the snow looked a little bit fake and blurry. But for the alpha texture, you really can use anything. Here's just a picture that I had generated, and it has red color in it. It's a logo. And I'll put the red output into the alpha. Yeah, that works too. And yeah, you can explore all that if you want to. Make your material as strange as you like. You can make like clothing patterns for your characters' shirts and pants and whatever you want. All right, so let's look at normal maps now. That's easy enough. It's basically the same thing that you did with the 3 texture images. You're going to get your 3 normal maps, And you actually can just double click on your texture node. We'll bring it up in the content browser. It's a good way to find things easily. And I think this is much more organized than in the previous video where we used 2 lerp nodes instead of a lerp 3. So you need to add another lerp 3 color node for your normal maps and plug in the RGB into your A, B, and C inputs and plug that red output from your alpha picture into the alpha channel of your lerp 3 node. And then plug that into normal, and we are done. Yay. Save your material. And then let's take a look. Let me disconnect the normal maps again. So this is what it looked like without, and I'll connect it again to normal and apply. Well, no, not yet. Let's look over here. There, did you see? Now we have shading that looks more 3D. But actually for my project, I don't want to use them. It doesn't make that much of a difference. So it's up to you if it looks good with your textures or not. Now, if you want to tile all these textures, you can copy that same setup we had before, but make sure you change the parameter name of your scalar parameter because it has to have a different unique name. Otherwise, when you change one number, it will change all of them to the same thing. And yeah, if you want to tile all 3 separately, this is the way to do it. And oops, because I copied from the alpha setup, it was at 0.01. Now these are blown up way too big. I'll change them all to 1. Well, you can see here, like, let me just leave the dried pine needles, and you can see how huge they are right now. And sometimes it helps break up the look of tiling if you change the scale of some of your textures. It's up to you to see what looks good. Of course, you don't want to make like gigantic clover or, you know, the scale has to be realistic. What we've just created, and let's save that, is a parent material pretty much. And that's not what we're actually going to use on our landscape. We're going to right click and create a material instance. And Unreal automatically names it with _inst. And then I'm going to apply that instance onto the landscape. And it'll look exactly the same, which it should. But here you can see in these drop downs in the material instance that we have all our parameters that we can easily adjust. The tiling of our textures, the tiling of our alpha pattern. And that's really useful when you're trying to set up your scene. Much easier. All right, I'm going to test in VR. And don't mind that Yeti. That was AI generated and AI animated in Meshy, and he definitely needs a little editing still. But we're here for the landscape. It looks pretty good. I like the clover. Oh, and the song too is AI generated. This is what I was doing over Christmas. The snow looks a little bit fake and blurry. I'm gonna see if I can fix that. But I do like the clover and the pine. We still have our big chipmunk over there too. And I'll play with the lighting later to make it look even better. The snow looks blurry and fake. So I think I'll make an exception to my rule of no normal maps in VR. And for snow, a normal map is probably going to help. And by the way, if you see grid lines and that's getting in your way, click on Show and then just uncheck the grid. And that's going to help you see your material better. All right, let's go back into the parent material that we created. And I'm only going to use the normal map for snow. But can I do that? I'm gonna have to use the LERP 3 color because the normal map has to correspond properly as it spreads across the landscape. It has to correspond to its own texture. And I definitely don't want normal maps for the grass or the pines. What I'm going to do is type in constant and choose a constant 3 vector. This way, I am just going to make a flat color. Type in 0.5, 0.5, and 1 for the X, Y, and Z coordinates. That's going to get you this kind of color, which for a normal map just means no information. So it's not going to have any bumps or dips or anything like that. And I'm just going to use that for B and C inputs. So basically we're saying, here's a normal map for snow and blank for the grass and the pine. And of course I have to bring my alpha texture. It looks like I'm using the RGB channel here. I don't know. I'm supposed to be using the red channel. Whatever. It doesn't actually matter. All right. Did you see that on the left? Look at that. The snow has a texture from the normal map or height information, the illusion of bumps and divots. This is how it was before. And then, wow, what a difference. It looks like real snow. Before it looked sort of like a fog. All right, let me try to find some snow and see if that normal map, oh yeah. I don't know if it's going to translate well to the screen, but in VR, this looks really pretty good. It looks like a real snow texture, like the wind has swept through the snow. I'm going to just clean this up a little bit more. You can double click on one of these wires or connectors and just make sure you get that sort of crosshair cursor, and then you can drag it and sort of reroute your wires so they're not going through other nodes. That's good enough, I think. Another thing, I'm not that familiar with what all this means, but in stats, you can see 200 instructions. And I think this is a good way to check if your material is too complicated. I've noticed that some of the Megascans materials were about 210 instructions. I guess 200 is probably fine. And don't forget, you can right click on any of these texture nodes and convert it to a parameter. Just select convert to parameter, give it a name for that variable, and then when you go into your material instance, now you can easily change your picture just by checking the box. And you can use the drop down, or you can drag and drop. And then of course we can also change our tiling. And this is extremely convenient. The best part about making the material graph and the material instance, even though it's, complicated, it's not that fun to do. The good news is that you only have to do it once, because you can right click and go to Asset Actions, Export, Migrate, and you can migrate this material instance and this parent material into a different Unreal project. And then you don't have to recreate these nodes ever again, which is really nice. This next part is kind of technical, and I also don't fully understand it, and so you might want to skip it. I just wanted to look into optimizing and understanding how this alpha works exactly. And I did notice that in the drop down you can see sampler type. This Perlin noise that I used is a mask type. Also, you can see color, grayscale, alpha. There's all kinds of stuff. My understanding was that linear grayscale is what was used here, but it seems like I asked ChatGPT about it too, and it said you can use a mask, you can use the grayscale, you can use alpha, just to save a little bit of memory versus using color. If you click, let's just take a look at this. Yeah, here you can see mask, compression, no sRGB. That was something ChatGPT told me. If you can avoid using this sRGB, you're going to save a little bit of memory, I guess, or something. Now, I tried to make my own, like I said, in Midjourney, my own alpha grayscale. It imported originally as a default, like this. And so I thought I would convert it to a mask, but when I did so, look at that. Did you see how it got washed out? Oh, wait, now how do I put it back again? Oh yeah, because it got rid of this. Okay, so even if I do grayscale, right? If I get rid of sRGB, it just gets washed out. And if I don't have those true black colors, it's not going to apply my first texture very much in the landscape. I think converting to grayscale from default maybe is a little bit more optimized, but this is something you might want to look into if you care that much. I doubt it matters for modern computers with good processors. I don't think you really have to spend too much time agonizing over this. But one other thing, like if you do change something, like say I make this into grayscale, now it's angry because the sampler type doesn't match, and you would have to find the one that it wants now, which in this case is linear grayscale. Anyway, this is just something I was dabbling with, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole with this. It's time to move on with the project. In the next video, I am going to fix this Yeti, totally redo him to make him look really good. So stay tuned.